Frank shouldn't have made it that far. Let's be honest. Like, Frank dies the first time that he hits a drug dealer with a wrench around other drug dealers.
Frank is a fundamentally broken person who needs some serious help. And even though, yes, he saved Sarah, he did all the things that he said he was going to do, he did it in the most psychotic, violent way possible.
Yeah.
The fact he's not in prison is a miracle.
That's the movie you're defending, Brian.
Yeah, I know. I said,
Oh,
listen,
come on.
listen,
now.
man. Listen, man. I said that it is not awful, but it's problematic. Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
I can't wait to talk about Defender. I mean Kick-Ass. I mean Blank Man. I mean Super.
Blank Man? You pulled a blank man. that is a deep cut right there. Oh, man. Well, this week we're talking all about superhero movies and, of course, getting into the next entry in our ever-growing series of Really That Awful? Right, John? These are movies that...
Question mark?
Question? But these are movies that maybe you heard about or maybe you saw and they didn't quite land back in the day, but they've somehow grown a bit of a cult following. And you ask yourself the question of, were they really all that bad back in the day? And this week we are talking, of course, about 2010's Super, starring Rainn Wilson and Elliot Page. And, you know, talking about a movie like Super, you know, we're obviously talking, John, about, you know, the superhero genre and like theatrical distribution and all of that stuff and these big movies playing. So it makes sense that we bring in a guest who kind of has their own movie theater that they work with. Yeah, we have with us local Pittsburgh film writer as well as Rotten Tomatoes critic. And he is the director of communications and media relations with the Lindsay Theater. We have Josh Axelrod with us. Hey, how's it going, Josh?
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, this is gonna be a real test of my critical mettle. This episode.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
It's going to be a
Can't wait.
bumpy ride. I mean, we were talking before the show about how this is going to be a fun episode because I'll
We
come
all
right
have
out
a
of the
slightly
gate.
different opinion.
Yeah. Usually when we do these Really That Awfuls, usually John and I, like, we love the movie. And so it ends up being just like, well, yeah, it really wasn't that awful. And I have a feeling this one is going to be one of those ones where we're going to be like, there's some conflicting opinions on this episode. But that's all good. And it's great to have those episodes. I actually
Spoiler
look
alert.
forward to those. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. So, I guess first out of the gate, I guess I'll ask this question. When was this the first time that you all saw Super? No.
No, it was not. Yeah. Sorry. For our non-video audience, like, I didn't, Josh, I didn't want to cut you off, so I just was shaking my head. But no, I
And I was trying to be polite and let the host go first.
Oh, there you go. I saw this, once, maybe twice back when it like first came out on physical media. So I didn't see it in the theater or anything, but I think I saw it like on DVD, and then maybe I saw it on like a movie channel, or something like that. So I remember the movie, but like before I rewatched it for this, if you asked me for specificities, like what was Elliot Page wearing in this scene, I wouldn't have been able to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar experience. I watched it around the time it first came out. Definitely at home. I doubt I would have seen this in theaters. So this was 2010, so I would have been about 18. Yeah, and it was around the time that The Office was one of the biggest shows on TV. Juno had just been a cultural sensation, and I had no idea who James Gunn was. This is probably my first ever exposure to the Gunverse, and frankly, this movie is kind of in its own weird way a skeleton key to a lot of what we now know and know about James Gunn. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fascinating little document. Super.
It is. It is interesting because this is like unbridled James Gunn. I feel that between his stint at Marvel and now at DC, like he's very much had to neuter himself because those are much more commercial films than, you know, when he was doing this or when he was with Troma or any other number of things.
I don't
like,
quite think this is unbridled James Gunn. I think this is tamped down James Gunn.
oh, he can get worse. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if you
Seen the tweets.
look up,
We've all seen the tweets.
well, I'm not talking about the tweets. I'm talking about if you just look up James Gunn Troma, okay? If you look up James Gunn Troma, you're going to see James Gunn before he became quote unquote dignified and before he was brought in. I mean, I was watching one that, and I'll link to this, but it was a PSA that Troma had done back in, I'd say, 1997. It might 97 or 99, and it was Sergeant Kabuki Man. And I don't know if you're familiar with Sergeant Kabuki Man, but he's one of the Troma-like characters. And he done a PSA on the dangers of masturbation. And you know who played the insane masturbator in that film? James Gunn.
Who, Brian?
James Gunn.
It was either going to be James or Sean.
No, it was totally James Gunn. But like, so that is unbridled James Gunn. That's where he came from. I have respect for that because I personally love Troma. I've always loved Troma. I've loved their very indie nature to their work. But it's very different. It's very underground cinema, like total schlock. And if you're into that stuff, great. If you're not, you're going to be like, what the hell is this? So he came from that. And I look at Super as like the dividing line between where he went next with Guardians of the Galaxy and then obviously now running, you know, DC Studios and Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad. Not Suicide Squad. There's a reason why I say that. So all of these like A-list superhero films that have an edge to them. And Super kind of sits in the middle. It kind of sits as the dividing line between Tromaverse and Hollywood.
Well, we should get to exactly like a synopsis of this film because what's so interesting is this does seem like a fuck you to superhero movies. This is a deconstruction of the template, in all ways. But for him to then go and actually make straight up studio superhero movies after something like this seems kind of odd.
Well, what's funny,
it's like hiring Mel Brooks for a Star Wars movie after he makes Spaceballs.
Yeah. What's hilarious, John, though,
That's
that you mentioned that. What's hilarious, John, you mentioned that is this came out in 2010. You know what other superhero movie came out in 2010 that was deconstructing the superhero? Kick-Ass.
Same year.
These all came out roughly around the same time. But I do want to get to a little synopsis straight from IMDb. And Josh, which voice should I use for reading this synopsis? Should I read it in, say, a Jar Jar Binks type voice, or should I read it in my movie theater voice that I have done in the past?
Movie theater voice.
Movie theater voice?
Okay, I'm already outvoted. Go ahead.
You were going to do Jar Jar.
All right, let's do Jar
Jar. I
Jar.
never heard it, so I mean, I want the privilege.
You have, well, I mean, you were the guest, so I won't
make you do anything that you're going to regret. Though.
I do a movie review podcast that I've done for 10
with
years.
me.
With John, there's plenty of regrets.
You do bits.
I do bits. Okay, I will try to do this in my best Jar Jar Binks voice because our guest is here with us. All right. After his wife falls under the influence of a drug dealer, Misa thinks an everyday guy transforms himself into the Crimson Bolt. Ooh, bad juju, a superhero with
voice.
Best intentions but lacking in superhero skills. Bad doo-doo.
You're welcome to use your movie theater voice.
Too late.
I apologize to everyone.
The bit's passed, Josh. I'm past it.
You've already done it. That was basically the whole movie. You're right.
Yeah. But for the people whose ears aren't bleeding, but yeah, I mean, it kind of, thank you. I appreciate that. It kind of begins more or less with, an ordinary guy whose wife kind of just is subsequently pulled into a drug dealer's ring. Like, it's kind of funny how it just goes from like, yes, he's happily married. His wife really doesn't pay much attention to him after a couple of years. And, oh, yeah, by the way, she's doing drugs in the family room with strangers.
Yeah, this movie starts very, very quickly.
Yeah,
it's almost like, dear journal, I'm going to get you caught up on the last, 5 years of my life in 2 minutes.
A lot of this is dear journal.
You know who I had kind of forgotten existed until this movie was Liv Tyler, who is the daughter of one of the most famous people on the planet, and who had a nice little Hollywood career for him. And she still shows up on occasion. And
every once in a while.
For the first 5 minutes, I thought she was Jennifer Garner. And then I was like, oh, nope, that is Liv Tyler.
She has a blink and you miss it kind of appearance in this because, obviously, Liv Tyler's character is kind of the whole crux of the movie. Everything that Frank does, played by Rainn Wilson, is because he's trying to save Sarah. And that's kind of the whole reasoning why he's doing what he's doing.
Well, ostensibly.
Yeah.
Is Kevin Bacon human trafficking her? Is that what we should get?
Yes.
I would say
he's just drugging her up and letting guys fuck her. Yeah. Okay.
I don't think he's doing that until the very end of the movie. I think he's more or less like saying, let me try out all my drugs that I have on you because you're a junkie. But obviously it's not that much of a step to go from, hey, let me go drug you up, to human trafficking.
Yeah. So can I give a couple of just blurbs here from reviews for this movie? So, Super's intriguing premise and talented cast are drowned in a blood-red sea of graphic violence, jarring tonal shifts, and thinly written characters. Catherine Bray wrote, it's not that this type of movie shouldn't be made. This type of movie could be brilliant, but it plays like every first draft idea anybody had found its way to the screen because it made someone laugh over a few drinks. Let's see. There's a great movie somewhere inside James Gunn's dark comedy, Super. Super is an undeniably entertaining film, but there's something off about it. Super's a funny film, a twisted story, and occasionally a very good movie, just rarely at the same time. Owen Gliverman of Entertainment Weekly said, this trifle about a doofus who becomes a costume superhero, even though he has no special powers, might have seemed funkier before Kick-Ass, yet the movie is written and directed by James Gunn with a certain whimsical black comic flair. It's really a one-joke movie. So.
I disagree.
I think those are all pretty fair.
Josh thinks they're pretty fair.
Brian, as you were interluding at the beginning, you seem to like it. Dutch, you don't like it, and I'm somewhere in between. I feel like I have the hardest job where I'm like, okay, I was entertained by it, but I don't think it's very good.
The funny thing, the hilarious thing is, for our video audience, John quite literally is positioned in the middle of the frame. Yeah. That was not done on purpose. It ended up just happening that way. But Josh, obviously, I want to. You're our guest. I want to give you kind of your points here too. Why do you not like this movie? What is it that you saw in it that you're just like, I don't really get it?
That could be a loaded question.
Yeah, my guy, considering some of the things in this movie. But let me state for the record that I remembered kind of liking this movie when I first saw it. Again, around the time I was 18, because like you said, superhero movies were just kind of taking off as this culturally overwhelming thing that was happening. And we hadn't really had that many deconstructions of it yet. The edgelords hadn't come in and tried to be like, this is what would really happen. So I don't remember if I saw this or Kick-Ass first. I know I saw Kick-Ass in a movie theater, and I haven't rewatched Kick-Ass in a while, so I don't know how it aged, but I think that movie rules. And Super at the time, I was like, this isn't quite Kick-Ass level, but it's really interesting, and I thought it was funny. And I am now a 34-year-old man with a wife and a mortgage, and I see this movie just a little bit differently. And the first thing that jumps out to me is that James Gunn had not learned how to light an outdoor scene, and it looks like a documentary. And the Lindsay shows a lot of movies that were made like on very low budgets around Pittsburgh, and it's one of the coolest things we do. It's called our Emerging Filmmaker Showcase. Super would have fit in really well with that level of movie. The fact that it has actors that I recognize in it is, and with filmmaking, honestly, with filmmaking that rudimentary is kind of insane.
Well, the budget was 2.5 million, and the movie made 593,000. So it was a flop with audiences as well.
If you had reversed those numbers, that would have made more sense to me.
Oh, harsh. I gotta tell you, I saw this movie right around the time when it first came out, and I was a fan of Kick-Ass. I still am. I don't really care for Kick-Ass 2. I thought that was like kind of like with what was it, Birdemic 2, where they kind of got in on the joke and they were like, oh yeah, let's just go make a sequel and rehash it. It's not going to be nearly as good.
And one of the stars of your movie shitting all over it on the media tours.
Yeah, I mean,
Jim Carrey did not.
I don't think there should be so much gun violence.
Yeah,
already then.
Then you shouldn't have starred in this movie.
Yeah,
alrighty then. But I don't know. I liked Kick-Ass. I did not care for Kick-Ass Part 2. And with this one, I think the reason why I enjoy it is, one, I do enjoy the kind of ultra violent horror cinema already. I mean, that is already like I'm already a fan of Troma. I'm a fan of where James Gunn comes from. I think it is yeah, Josh.
Can I just interject and ask a serious question?
Absolutely.
This isn't horror, right? Like, this would not be considered horror by any stretch, because
there's horrific elements, but no,
there's horror elements in it, and I would say very dark comedy.
Yeah,
very dark comedy. Sure. I was just curious when you mentioned you were a fan of horror, that this is not horror.
No, it's not horror. But what I mean is, like, Troma's brand of horror and brand of shock cinema has always had this vein. Like, if you go back to the 90s and 80s with Troma, which is really kind of the mainstay of that studio. I haven't really watched anything they've done recently, but like right around the time that Gunn got in Troma, and he's even gone on record and said, like, Lloyd Kaufman, who's the creator of Troma, that was his mentor. That's the person who taught him everything he knows about the film industry. I kind of look at it in the same way that people viewed like Roger Corman back in the 60s. People like Francis Ford Coppola learned off of him because they were making these low-budget films. So, I kind of see these kind of elements from Troma come into this film. I don't consider it horror. I consider it more on the line of, like, how can we take a Troma film and wrap it in something that has a bit more meaning, but also deconstruct the superhero concept down? I mean, this came out in 2010. We're only a couple years removed from Iron Man, right, releasing, and really right at the dawn of the whole superhero kind of growth that we're seeing now, where it's honestly played out to the point. So I think it was a smart movie to come in and really answer the question, just like what Kick-Ass was dealing with, is why could this type of person not exist in reality? And kind of blending a little bit of what, like, the Dark Knight tried to do by grounding Batman in realism, but then taking it even a step further to, Rainn Wilson's not, Christian Bale. He is not, muscular or anything like that. He's kind of pathetic through most of the movie. And it isn't until he's kind of, through this guise as the Crimson Bolt, kind of regains a little bit of his almost self-respect. So that's why I like it, because I think deep buried in there is heart to it, even if it is kind of wrapped in this ultra violence and camp.
It's the idea of, what if somebody who's like for whatever reason, mentally unstable, puts on a Halloween costume and goes and it becomes a fascist, you know, a brutalistic fascist. It's like you get around it with Batman because Batman's a Mary Sue, right? He's the world's greatest detective. He's the world's greatest fighter. He's the
Don't be fucking talking about Batman like that.
I mean,
that is
Batman.
I was gonna say,
Batman
do you want to
can
get
do no wrong.
aggravated?
What was that?
What's that?
Do you want to get aggravated for calling Batman a Mary Sue? Because you will.
Yeah, but you know the thing, the biggest problem I have with this movie is because Brian, I like that stuff as well. Is like I would have liked if there was maybe more repercussions to the violence instead of it just being there for shock humor value. Like if he was more the villain, and you know, and especially with Bolte, his partner, who that character is homicidal.
Yeah.
You know, like if there was more
I got nothing for Bolte other than
no defense there.
Bolte needs some help. A lot of help. More I think than Frank does. Like Bolte needs a lot of help. A lot of time spent in that comic book shop.
Yeah, and if you're for some reason
so
listening
wild
to this
that Elliot
episode
Page
and you
is
haven't
like,
seen this, that's
I'm sorry, I was
his
just gonna say,
partner in crime. Yeah, go ahead.
It's just wild that Elliot Page was like 3 or 4 years removed from an Oscar nomination, and then did this.
Well, what's funny is that Juno technically led to both Rainn Wilson and Elliot Page starring in this film.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That's right. He's the convenience store
So
owner.
what had happened was James Gunn worked in this movie since 2002. So that's why I say like it has more of a Troma feel to it because in 2002 he was still in the thick of it. So he had taken it around town, he had chopped it around, and no one was really picking up on it because it was too violent and that sort of thing, which I get that. Isn't it? What was that?
That's its whole purpose, isn't it? It's supposed to be. He uses a wrench to like bludgeon people in the face. It should be violent as all hell. I thought that was the whole purpose of it.
Right, but I go with this is wrapped around with something a lot deeper, and I think that when people look at the script on the surface, they're not seeing that part. And I can understand that. But it wasn't until Slither, which was his first film that he directed, which if you haven't seen Slither, that's fucking hilarious. Like, I don't know. Josh, have you ever seen Slither before?
I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of it. And I have nothing bad to say. I will say I am generally a wimp when it comes to horror movies. I am currently having like a mini horror movie renaissance over the last few years because like Sinners and Weapons and Backrooms and Obsession have become such cultural phenomenons. As a film critic, I'm like, I have to figure out what's going on here. So I'm just now finding my own like limits on horror. Like I watched The Substance and I was like, that's the only body horror I will accept.
There's such a plethora. There's such a plethora of body horror out there. Just pretty much.
I was nauseous. It's really
avoid
really
the Cronenberg section.
Yeah, just stay away from anything Cronenberg.
That's what I'm saying. So my point of all of this is that like I was not a Troma aficionado. I definitely anything pre-Super, like I would not have watched those horror movies. Gotcha. I do love a good horror comedy on occasion. Like Slither, I'm sure if I watch now, I'd be okay. But also, again, just knowing what James Gunn has become and the kinds of movies he made and how we've now come full circle to kindness is punk rock. I don't know. It's just fascinating to chart his evolution. But
but what's
Super is like you said, that bridge movie.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that because of Slither, he in essence kind of built enough credibility in Hollywood because that movie did so well that his ex-wife at the time, Jenna Fisher, who had obviously starred in The Office, knew Rainn Wilson and suggested him as the lead in this movie that he had kind of put on the back burner because he worked on Slither. And because Rainn Wilson had worked with Elliot Page in Juno, he was like, oh, Bolte should be Elliot Page. They would be perfect for this role. So it's interesting how everything kind of connects, even though you're just like, how in the hell does Elliot Page go from, yeah, you were an Oscar nominee 2 years ago with Juno, and now you're Bolte.
And somehow The Office is at the center of all this.
It is. It's The Office, man.
Well, it's funny if the budget's $2.5 million. I mean, how much went to Kevin Bacon, right? Is he $2 million of that $2.5 million budget?
I mean, maybe
Liv Tyler,
needs some
Liv Tyler
too. Okay.
Yeah.
Liv Tyler had just been in The Incredible Hulk. I mean, she was in like real big budget superhero movies at that point. And Lord of the Rings.
But Josh, that was The Incredible Hulk. Okay, that was not. That
I'm just talking about her quote. I'm talking about her quote. I'm not talking about the quality of the movie.
But this is also Hollywood. They don't pay women.
Unfortunately, that's too accurate.
Yeah,
points were made.
Points were made. So anyway, yes, let's talk a little bit about these characters, right? We talked a little bit about Frank. He's kind of homicidal. Do you want to go deep into Bolte and what makes them kind of insane?
Can I make one quick point about Frank? Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I have a point to make too. You go first.
Let's make some points about Frank then.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly point out that Frank, when he begins his crusade, is beating up black people with a wrench. And this is where I kind of, like, when I was 18, I was like, yeah, he's getting all those drug dealers. And now I'm just wondering if James Gunn understood what he was doing or not. And you guys can maybe help me work through that. Because I don't always know in James Gunn's work if he really understands the points he's making or if it's just kind of, we'll call them happy accidents sometimes. Because that would actually be really good satire of, like, if Batman, just started off in, like, what, poor, underprivileged, majority people of color neighborhoods. That's what it might look like. But I don't know. I don't know that this movie is smart enough to make that point. So that's kind of where I'm.
It's a very interesting point that you make because I don't know if it's a matter of he's trying to make a reference to something of, like, stop and frisk. I mean, stop and frisk. We kind of came in our lexicon after this movie, but that whole idea of just like, oh, let's just go disturb, underprivileged, cultures or communities of color, as continuing our Jim Crow ways. But, or is this just a matter of a casting agent went, well, in their ignorance, well, we need some drug dealers. They would be black people, wouldn't they? You would hope not in 2010. Yeah.
Yeah, but James Gunn is the director. This is his movie. He would have control over that.
And I'm not here to defend James Gunn. I don't give a shit about it one way or another. So, yeah.
No, it is definitely... No, it's definitely problematic. Like, I'm not going to tell you it's not problematic. It absolutely is problematic. And the thing is, though, like, around this time, you can point to a lot of movies that did similar things with people of color and really stereotyping people to certain roles. So while it's very easy to say, like, well, James Gunn has this movie doing it, I can also say, like, 2010 Hollywood also was doing this across the board. And so I think there is a bit more credence to the casting agent saying, oh, well, we're doing this for everyone else in town. So this little indie film is doing it. Let's do it for them. Now, does that mean that's right? No, absolutely it isn't. And I would say, like, why couldn't the drug dealer be a skinny white guy?
Well, I guess charitably, like I said, there could be a smart piece of satire in there because it could just be, again, this is what a mentally ill man who thinks he's seeing visions of God and wants to become a superhero, this is what it might actually look like. And again, this is where I struggle with James Gunn because I can't tell if he's self-aware enough to be making points like that or if it's really just his idea of something funny.
Yeah. That I can't give you a solid on, but I will say, like, exactly. I think it's problematic across the board. You're not wrong for bringing that up.
Your thoughts, you're more thoughtful than I am here. My take on Frank is, it does seem odd that the duality of him stopping a child from being raped in a car, and there is a nobility in that. Maybe not how he goes about doing it, but there's a nobility to that, to him taking a wrench to people's face because they cut a line. And it's just like, it almost seems like, what are you trying to say? Like, is there almost a nobility in his violent sociopathy, or is it that he's just a crazy person, and if you throw your cigarette butt on the ground, he's going to bludgeon you in the skull? Like, it's kind of having its cake and eating it too, I think.
I kind of look at it as the moments where we're seeing Frank bludgeon people because they butt in line. That's Troma. Like, that is pure Troma comedy there. That is not, but it's done, unfortunately, in a way where there is no joke. Like, it isn't. It is horrific. And I think it's almost like James Gunn said, hey, I learned all these tricks of the trade at Troma, but I want to apply them and wrap them in reality. And
this is good context for me, because when he does stuff like this in a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, like, it's way more obvious that it's a joke. And it's way more obvious that the goal is to make the audience laugh. And here, to be fair, part of the goal is probably to make the audience cringe. And it certainly made me cringe. I just need, I hate trying to ascribe intent without having any way of knowing intent. But the fact that I have to even ask the question, I think, is tough.
Well, let me ask you this question, Josh. Do you think the fact that Guardians of the Galaxy is based in a fantasy outer space setting with fantasy characters, do you think that might make some of the things that you see in there land a bit better than something that is gritty and grounded in literally reality? I mean, Frank is literally the line cook at a diner. He is that guy that makes your hamburger. He's not some raccoon in outer space. So do you think that difference in setting and character is enough to make those things land?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really astute point. And I mean, I guess you could argue that, Frank is just as much of an underdog in his own way as the Guardians were. Again, Frank does some absolutely horrific things that I think make it difficult to empathize with him. But also, he doesn't have the benefit of being an adorable raccoon or a talking tree with a monotone Vin Diesel voice. And I don't know. James Gunn has definitely gotten way more fantastical over the course of his career. This movie, I guess the one solid thing I can say about Super is that it is grounded. Even the flights of fancy are pretty obviously there's never really a moment where I'm questioning whether something's actually happening or not. It's always clear if something is in Frank's head or we'll call it a dream, a delusion, whatever you want to call it. In Guardians and those movies, everything's happening at all times, and it can be as weird as it wants because we're in a comic book universe.
Right. I mean, I ascribe that what's happening to Frank is he's having depression and mental illness of some kind, in a psychotic break that is occurring. I'm not a doctor. That's not what I give no medical advice on this podcast. But I mean, seeing tentacles shoot out of a TV and your walls, and then them cut open your brain, and the finger of God rubs your brain, and Jesus, Nathan Fillion in a superhero costume shows up. That's psychosis of some kind. I'm pretty sure.
I do wonder. It's funny you should mention that. I do wonder, and obviously didn't bother me at all if you've listened to this show, but I wonder how many people were upset about the mockery of religion and God and Christ.
I mean, that's James Gunn's MO.
Exactly. But I wonder how many people were bothered by that. It didn't affect me one bit, but I wonder if some people were like, that's a bridge too far. I
doubt it, just because this movie already was not popular to begin with. I think there is something to be said for
Yeah.
that, but I mean, it's always done in a cult tongue-in-cheek way. And even here's the thing: James Gunn himself shows up as the demon that Jesus Nathan Fillion is fighting throughout the fake TV show. Which, again, like if you want an example of how much of a movie this is that's so related to Troma films, James Gunn showing up as a character in them is kind of proof positive.
Yeah, those little interludes were actually kind of funny. Like that's the kind of I guess that's a good juxtaposition because I know that's satire and it's very clearly communicated. And I don't think this movie was popular enough for anyone to really find that offensive, like you said. So it didn't really bother me. It's just like I can tell exactly what he was going for with that, and there are just a lot of other elements of this movie that just feel, like I said, a little more edgelordy than like really trying to make salient points. But that is also kind of James Gunn's brand, and now, continues to be. So that's fine.
Do we want to move on a little bit to talk about Bolte?
Yeah,
because
sure, let's do it.
Elliot Page is kind of crazy in this movie.
Homicidal maniac.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, little bit. For a video audience, Josh is doing a little bit. Like, Elliot Page is kind of insane, and at first they come off as very much just kind of trying to educate, Frank in superhero lore, but because they end up figuring out their secret identity, because one of the first times that Frank gets shot, which guess what? If you dress up like a superhero and go into crime-ridden areas, you kind of may get shot, which is exactly what happens. I am glad that this movie did show that reality that you could be shot and killed. That was something that Kick-Ass never really did, was show
different tone.
Different, but
well, to be fair, the first time Kick-Ass went out, he got beaten up so badly that he basically had to become Wolverine to survive.
I get that. But I'm just saying, like, the reality of a person dressing up like a superhero and doing what Frank does is more aligned with what you see in Super than what you would see in Kick-Ass. Okay, like what happens to Libby in this, getting shot in the face at the end of the movie, spoilers, that would happen. Like, sorry. You don't have superpowers. The only thing you have are guns and pipe bombs. You're going to get shot in the face.
Well, what's weird about Libby's character is that they seem perfectly normal at the comic book shop. Kind of that young, snarky employee at a place. But, well, compared to what we get when they go on the first mission and they're like, I don't like this person. Let's bum rush their house and bludgeon them to fucking death.
You're forgetting they keyed Libby's friend's car. Maybe.
Maybe it's doing a lot of heavy lifting here. It could just be somebody that Libby doesn't like.
It could, that's what I'm saying. He's a homicidal maniac. Very much so. But kind of goes well with Frank's psychosis. Like Libby makes Frank look sane.
Well, and that's. Yeah. I was just gonna say that's probably the reason that character exists to
show what extreme.
And it's really funny that we're having this conversation the week the Odyssey has come out, because no spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it, because I know Brian
earmuffs. I haven't seen it.
Or hasn't read the 1,000-year-old book.
Yeah, seriously. I have the book downstairs.
All I'll say is that there's an argument to be made Elliot Page gives the best performance in that movie. At least I would be willing to say that on a podcast, which I just did. So it's just really funny because they are awful in this movie. It is not a good performance.
I wouldn't call them awful. I would call them insane.
I think the character is I think it's an insane character, and I don't know who could have done anything with that role, but I don't think it was a great match of performer and character.
So with this show, with this type of off branch of our show, really that awful, we discuss, does the film deserve a second chance? And we can't look at it through the lens of modern day, because because I'm getting to one big point here, but like there is use of, the F word in here, and I'm not talking fuck. And other things that are like 2010, like it's edgy.
We can put that stuff in a time capsule. That's fine.
Right, yeah, because we got to judge it by like, did it deserve better when it came out, kind of thing. One thing that I don't think is acceptable under any circumstance is a nonchalant rape.
Yeah, I mean,
do we want to talk about a trigger warning for our audience?
Trigger warning. Seriously, like in all honesty, like when John, when you told me we were going to do this movie, like this scene was the one scene that I'm like, it's very delicate to talk about. And
I also need to posit that there are at least 2 rape scenes in this movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, his prison imagination thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which frankly was way more offensive even than, I guess not more offensive, but was at least like up there to me in terms of that didn't fly in 2010 and wouldn't have flied today.
That was that particular dream one was totally played for laughs, and I don't think it landed. But what I'm referencing is more or less Bolte's sexual assault of Frank. And that's what I'm going to call it. It's a sexual assault. It is.
It's a thing that happened.
It was honestly a thing that honestly you could remove that entire scene, and the film would not be affected by it. It's very rare that I look at a movie and go like, yeah, I don't think that scene needs to be in there. But this particular one, I was like, what does this add?
Yeah, like we already knew they were crazy. We didn't really need it hammered home to that unfortunate of a level.
Yeah, I mean, it offers nothing other than to make me really dislike and really hate Libby a lot, because I mean, Libby knows that Frank is a broken man, that something is wrong in his brain. Granted, Libby is also a broken person, but I really look at that as taking advantage of someone who is in a deep depression.
Yeah.
This is the other weird part of that character, because they're just, sometimes you'll find these we know Elliot Page is a trans man. Sometimes in movies you will find female characters who seem to be there solely to just randomly have a crush on the main character for inexplicable reasons. And I mean, Bolte obviously had a lot of other problems going on, but that was kind of their main reason of being, was that they just like Frank walked in and they were like, oh, okay, Rainn Wilson, this is what I'm into. So like that, and I mean, to really, again, hammer it home in the most unfortunate way possible. Like it's that, there's certain, like I said, edgelordy elements about this movie that are at least attempting to be funny, and I respect that. This wasn't even attempting to be funny. It was just straight up what it was.
Shocking. It was
It was shocking.
Yeah.
And look, I need to preface this right now and say that it's not acceptable under any circumstance, but also there's something creepy about Hollywood where he's probably, I don't know their exact ages, but like
I would
Rainn
say
Wilson's
in this time probably 40s, early 40s.
Well, yeah, Rainn Wilson's playing like a 45-year-old, and Elliot is playing like
21.
probably 21. So
22.
It's like, it's unacceptable in any circumstance, but it's also kind of like, Hollywood, why are you so creepy? Like
the Hollywood age gap thing is it's eternal.
I guess for me, it's the only thing I could think of is, there's a lot of insinuation you always see when it comes to superheroes and their sidekicks and all of that stuff. I mean, I can point to the stuff in the comic books about Batman and Batgirl. Okay. The only thing I could think of is, James Gunn is like, let's throw that into this movie for reasons. I would say, okay, fine, but why then do we have to have a sexual assault? Why under that way? Couldn't it be that a relationship develops between Bolte and Frank in a healthy, natural way? Why do we have to go into this man is sleeping, he's depressed about his wife, he's such a broken man, and Bolte takes advantage of that?
Or he could be more of a father figure, but
or that. But if we're going in 2010, like, hey, we want to have Elliot Page there to have a relationship with Rainn Wilson, why is it done in this way? I guess that's my question, is of all the things, why did it have to be in a very brutal, disgusting way that it's shown in this film? And this is the one part that I'm just like, I think I fast forwarded through it because I'm like, this is gross.
And again, Bolte's like ultimate fate is like actually a pretty smart commentary on what would happen if you tried to be a superhero sidekick.
Oh yeah, exactly.
In real life.
Exactly.
But again, it's preceded by the grossest possible thing. And again, this is where I'm like, I don't know. Did James Gunn think this was funny is a question I unfortunately have to ask, because it's a question that's raised in my mind by the inclusion of that scene.
I think it's worse than that. I think that this is the end of our second act. We're going into our third act. I think that this scene is supposed to give him the manhood to go and save his wife. I think that it's supposed to be like a great achievement for him, which is,
I don't know if I would go
worse.
I don't know if I'd go that far, John. I think because if you remember, right after this happens, he is so horrified by what Bolte did that he throws up. And in the vomit is where he sees his wife's face, who says, save me. So I don't know. Again, I don't know why this had to be there. You're telling me you couldn't have some other way. So I don't know if it's necessarily like he gets the manhood to do it. I think it's more like he realizes that he's just what they've been doing has been nothing. That really the whole point of everything that he's been doing has been to go rescue Sarah, and he hadn't done it yet because he was under the guise that, it wasn't the right time. And maybe this was the point where it got off the rails. If I'm the director, look at this, maybe like this is the moment where your kid's sidekick is sexually assaulting you. That's when everything went off the rails and we lost sight of the real mission. That's the only thing I could guess.
Which, again, I just keep having to hammer this point home. The reason I was not connecting with this movie the second time was I don't know what the mission was. I don't think it was well communicated. Sarah.
It's to save Sarah.
I'm talking about the mission. I'm talking about James Gunn's mission with the movie. I just don't think again, it's really hard to read a director's mind, but also it's very easy in many of James Gunn's subsequent movies to figure out what he was doing. And in this one, I feel like there was just a lot of shock value for the sake of shock value. And it's one of my least favorite things in movies.
It's a really good point, because the movie in the third act divulges down to big showdown at the drug dealer's mansion and him getting Liv Tyler back. Like, you think that the movie would be smarter, that it'd be a commentary on what would happen if, one of these spree shooters, and I know that's more common today than it is then, what if they just put on a costume and bludgeoned people and they thought, I'm doing this for the greater good of humanity? But the movie just divulges into the indie Troma version of Big Laser in the Sky, that you get in like the Avengers or something like that, where it's like, okay, the showdown where I have to save my woman and I am heroic, and it's like,
I mean, that, let's be honest here. This, as we talked about before, this is a deconstruction of all of those superhero movies. So where they all have some sort of showdown.
But does it fall apart as a deconstruction?
I don't think it does. I don't think it does. I think it is rooted more in realism than anything, but with a dash of fantasy. Because, if we thought about it, Frank would be killed in that shootout. Like, he would not be the one to survive. But this is also a superhero movie, and he's got to be the one to kind of survive. And we got to see Jock kind of get what's coming to him, and all the people who kind of run him. That's kind of how these all movies go. I mean, I could point to, the Batman from 1989. I mean, that back half of that is what? Batman flying around, capturing balloons filled with gas, and then battling the Joker up a cathedral. It's ridiculous. We still love it. Makes sense within the world. And I think this is
different tone.
It's a different tone, but it's still the same thing. Batman has to save Vicky Vale. There's I see similarities between the two.
You're right, but that's also when a parody stops being a parody, is when it just does the things it's ostensibly trying to parody does. Like,
I don't think this is a true parody. I don't.
And once again, you're making my points for me. It's like not a good deconstruction, in addition to just being like kind of jankily made and shocking.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't know if I would call it jankily made. I don't know if I would go that far. I don't think it's a true parody. I don't think it's designed to be that way. I think it's designed to be like a deconstruction through the eyes of someone who spent their formative years in Troma and spent their formative years making shock cinema. That is who this is. This is literally, it's like, ask Roger Corman to make a serious film. That's the same thing we've got here. The same guy who made all of those movies that were schlocky B movies from the 60s and 70s. It's asking that person to go ahead and make a movie like this. So I think it's a deconstruction. Do I think it is shittily made? No, I don't. I think there are problems with it. I think it loses sight of itself in many times. And I think it tries to regain its footing towards the back half.
Well, Corman did make Telltale Heart, so he did do some.
But I know that, but he also made a lot of shit too.
I mean, you could very much argue that, and there are James Gunn movies that I liked, but James Gunn has never really made a serious movie. Like, I
don't expect him to ever make a serious movie.
And that's what I'm saying. Ever. Like, James Gunn, that's not James Gunn's thing, and that's fine. There are plenty of filmmakers who have made movies that are largely for the purpose of entertainment, more than deep intellectual rigmarole or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. I just need the clarity of vision in movies like that. If the goal is just to entertain, that's perfectly fine. I mean, this movie is not that entertaining in addition to everything else to me.
I wouldn't go that far. I was entertained by it, but I'm a sick bastard, so I understand that.
And no, trust me, there are plenty of times where I can indulge my inner sick bastard. I mean, my theater, the Lindsay Theater and Cultural Center, is about to play Basic Instinct, so I am certainly not above some lovely 90s schlock here and there.
Yeah,
but like.
That's high-end 90s schlock. That's Paul Verhoeven high-end 90s schlock.
And that movie has a very clear vision. You know exactly what it's trying to do, and boy, does it achieve its goals.
It really does.
And and that's kind of how I usually like grade movies is, did you achieve the goals? Can I discern the goals you set up, and did you achieve them? And in this case, I'm not 100% sure he really set up the goals that well, and thus I can't really give him a high passing grade for achievement, because it's not a terrible movie. Just to be clear, it's a very muddled movie to me with just some unforgivable things. And again, he had not learned how to light outdoor scenes yet.
So yeah, I think So the kind of
I'm sorry. I was just so shocked by some of those outdoor scenes where I was like, this looks like a VH1 like music video or something.
Oh, don't apologize. That's the whole point of this particular episode. So yeah, you gave your Brian. I'll go to you now. Is it really that awful to kind of wrap things up?
We didn't even really talk about the actual ending yet. I mean, obviously we talked about the shootout, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the kind of resolution for Frank, because yes, Frank does kill Jacques in the most brutal way possible.
In the
He
script.
does save Sarah, but he doesn't get the girl at all. And, you know, Josh, I know you really don't like this movie, and I have a feeling you didn't like the ending. This actually was an ending I actually thought was probably more real than anything. Because think about it. Every time that you see a superhero who saves the heroine, there's always never a mention of any of the fucking trauma that person probably went through during captivity and during the actual rescue. And I like the fact that Liv Tyler, her character Sarah, views basically Frank as the person who, yes, saved her from basically death and probably being human trafficked if she wasn't already. But also realizing that Frank and Jacques are pretty much the same characters, only different. They were substitutes for her own addiction. She latched on to Frank because he felt safe, felt like something to get through her addiction. That kind of got boring. She still didn't deal with her problems. Then she finds Jock and she goes headfirst into the addiction. Frank obviously saves her, but now she kind of has to deal with her own problems. That's why she goes back to school. That's why she ends up marrying someone, ends up having kids. So I like the fact that it's a happy ending, but not necessarily for Frank. Like, it's not traditional in that sense. So I'm curious, you know, Josh, obviously you're our guest. I want to know your thoughts first on this ending. But I liked it. I thought for an ending, it was pretty good. Now, was it preceded by a bunch of muddled crap? Yeah, a little bit. But I thought in terms of like giving a resolution for the character that felt like it was earned, I was fine with it.
You know, you make some really compelling points. Like genuinely, in terms of like trying to come up with something resembling a more realistic ending for what he was. Let's say the clarity of purpose was a more realistic superhero story. It was effective, and I think it makes way more sense that Frank would not end up with Sarah than vice versa. Mm-hmm. I also appreciate that he did not kill the cute animal at the end. Which
were you waiting for him to kill the bunny? You're like, don't you fucking kill the bunny.
I'm sorry. That's just my least favorite James Gunn trope, and he can't get away with it. I'm so upset about what they did with Crypto and Supergirl. Anyway.
I didn't see Supergirl yet, so I don't know what happened.
Movie's okay. Just stop putting dogs in danger. It's not. Anyway. I guess my main issue with the ending is just that, like, Frank shouldn't have made it that far. Like, it's just hard to reconcile everything that came before with, like, let's be honest. Like, Frank dies the first time that he hits a drug dealer with a wrench around other drug dealers. So, you know, and I know this is a movie, and it's just, the suspension of disbelief for me was gone so early that by the time we got to the ending, I was just like, great. I'm glad. You know what? This is kind of what Frank deserves anyway. And also, like, Sarah obviously is a character with problems and with a degree of agency, but she is just sort of a damsel in distress. Like, she's kind of like, does she have that much more of an inner life than like Maggie Grace in Taken, who was also,
I would say she has more. I would say she has more. I would say she has more because obviously, like, we have one scene where her sister is talking to her. Yeah, I know, a little bit. She has a little bit more because we obviously have a scene early in the film where it's a flashback and it's her sister saying, don't you think this is a little fast? Don't you think that you're jumping into this? You haven't even, you know, dealt with your actual problems. That's why I say, like, I think that Frank being someone that's kind of it's codependency. Like, that's what this is, you know, Sarah doesn't deal with her problems, doesn't deal with her past addictions, and she's jumping from one person to the next. So, you know, I think that's where I say the ending, I think, is earned, and that's a little bit more to Sarah in this film than you would see in, say, Taken.
That's called a dry run.
Yeah, exactly.
What was that, John?
That's called a dry drunk. It's an old saying in AA where you stop drinking, but you don't actually confront any of the things that made you the way you were.
Yeah.
You just don't drink anymore. You're the same miserable son of a bitch. You just aren't drunk. You know?
Yeah.
I think in a vacuum, it was a pretty interesting ending, but it was just kind of the ending to a movie I'd already mentally checked out on. So that's probably why I just wasn't as high on it. But like everything you said, like that's where you could see the like James Gunn, the good James Gunn wheel spinning, where it's like, okay, this is what he should be doing, is like taking these tropes and putting them on their head.
So what you're saying, Josh, is that if James Gunn wants to hire someone to do a commentary for Super, it should be me. That is what you're saying.
I co-signed that 10,000%.
You co-signed that 10,000%.
And also, you know what, Brian? I also need to bring up another good point you made before we started recording, was that there are so many pieces of this movie that you can see that James Gunn blew up in other projects. Like
Peacemaker.
Especially that intro dance sequence, which frankly, the animated dance sequence is awesome. And then he just did it live action for Peacemaker.
I would argue that Super is the prototype for Peacemaker. 100%.
More so than Guardians. Definitely more so than Guardians. Superman.
Yeah. I would say that I'm talking about Peacemaker, the show. I'm not talking about like, the character. I really believe like he took lessons that he learned in Super and transposed them over to Peacemaker. I mean, there is some
1,000%.
ridiculous shit inside of the show Peacemaker on both seasons that are totally offensive on multiple levels, but it is evolved, if that makes sense. It all makes sense. So I think like he learned his lessons from Super and just put them into Peacemaker.
And for the record, I really liked Peacemaker.
Oh, I it's one of my favorite shows. Like even season 2, I thought was really good.
I'm looking forward to season 3.
But I don't know that we'll ever get a season 3. But I wish you the best.
It might. You never know. So John, you asked the question: do I really think this movie is awful? No, but I think it is problematic. So I would not call it awful. I would say that it's definitely worth a watch, but I would say that there are aspects of this movie that, unless you know and are a fan of Troma and that world and 2010 James Gunn, you will probably not have a good time watching this.
So I would say, if I have to say really that awful or not, I do lean more towards awful than I do good.
Shame. Shame this man.
Weirdly, I was entertained by the movie. I was entertained by it, but that doesn't mean that it's not awful. It's because it's also one of those things that, there's no discerning for taste, but that this movie doesn't have to be seen again, like where I would recommend somebody see Cable Guy. I would recommend somebody see, some of these other movies that we've done for the show. I think Super doesn't have to be seen. I think it could just go on the waste pile of life.
Josh is like, I never want to see this movie ever again.
Well, like, again, so this is a binary question, right?
Yeah.
Because, let's say in letterbox parlance, I'd probably give this a 2 out of 5. Like, it's not offensive. Like, generally a movie has to be, there are some offensive parts, but like it has to really like fully offend my sensibilities to get anywhere below a 2-star. Like, because of its Troma origins, because again, I'm just going to keep using the word edgelord because James Gunn is basically King Edgelord, and I think he'd probably say that himself.
Probably.
He'd wear that crown proudly. This movie, the one vision of clarity I can ascribe to this movie is definitely that it was going for it. It was going for that exact tone. So, yes, obviously it would lean awful because it's just the outdoor shots in all of his other movies make sense. These movies,
The outdoor shots really bothered you a lot.
It was like watching like an MTV reality show. I was so confused by how bad they looked. Even with the movie stars, I was like, you are just humans on a camera. You like, I don't know what it was that just took me out of it. But like, there's some entertainment value here. I will also say part of probably why I had issues with this movie was I was watching it on Pluto, and there was a 5 minute long St. Jude's commercial every 5 minutes, and it was taking forever to get through it, and I just was like, and by the end I was like, thank the blessed Lord.
There's so many fucking commercials on Pluto. It's almost not worth it. But
no.
I'll pay the $3.99.
I probably should have just rented it. Honestly, that's on me. But so I guess if I'm a little crabbier, I also blame Pluto a little bit for all those goddamn commercials.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
that's me being cheap. So
no, that's all right. I mean, I think there's value in this movie. I think if you're a fan of James Gunn as a whole, this is a good one to watch just to see like the evolution of a filmmaker. I mean, I think that's something that does have value of, seeing someone go from very early indie humble beginnings all the way to making Slither, then making Super, and then Guardians of the Galaxy, and then now where he's at now, which for at least right now, head of DC Studios. I mean, that's insane to go from literally the indie underground bottom of the barrel of Troma, which I love Troma, don't get me wrong, all the way up to DC.
Here, Brian, I'm going to do my best to say something nice here.
Yeah.
So I would put Super and to a certain degree Slither probably in the same like air that I would talk about season 1 of Parks and Recreation. Like, you have to watch them. They're not necessarily great, but you have to watch them to realize how far the rest of it came.
That's
because
true.
You won't fully appreciate how good these things eventually got, and goodness is in the eye of the beholder, although Parks and Rec is unassailable. You need those puzzle pieces to fully understand the evolution of this show, this filmmaker. So I didn't enjoy Super necessarily, but as a part of one of the most important filmmakers we have, regardless of your feelings on James Gunn, he is definitely one of our Hollywood's most important filmmakers. I fully understand where he came from and how far he's come. You have to watch Slither, which again is much better than Super, but Slither and Super, and I'm not going to sit there and say you have to go back and watch the Troma films. Maybe go.
No. It's good. It's good to know that he had his mark there. Like Romeo and Juliet's actually a pretty decent one, especially if you're into that sort of thing.
See, when you say words like that, then I don't know what to do with that.
It's literally a thing. Like you have to be Tiffany a fan. What was that?
That's my girl Tiffany in it.
There you go.
Tiffany
yeah. I mean, it has its own aesthetic and its own like thing. Like I don't know. I love schlock cinema the same way that I also love high-end cinema. I tell my wife asks me all the time, she's like, why do you watch these terrible movies? I'm like, listen, sometimes I want a filet mignon steak, but there are also a lot of times where I really want a greasy, unhealthy burger. They're still the same thing, right? Like, yeah.
Trust me, my wife, if I had a nickel for every time she was like, why do you watch things that you already knew you probably weren't going to like or weren't going to be good? Mm-hmm. I'd just be like, I have no regard for my own time. I just want to watch these things either to turn my brain off or so I can have an informed opinion on them.
There you go.
And
that's it.
I will say my version of schlock is like Space Jam. Like that's like my definition of
that's a different level of schlock. That's nostalgic schlock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I go to for schlock.
Fair enough.
The Troma stuff was not my bag, but if it's your bag, and if you're a James Gunn fan, you probably are aware of it, or we'll put that, you know what, Brian, you convinced me. We'll put it in the same camp as Slither and Super. If you want to be a James Gunn completist, you gotta be a completist.
There you go. Well, I want to get to some reviews. So the review section.
Oh, I didn't know we'd have reviews.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got reviews. So Josh, you familiar with our review section?
I am not. This is going to be a treat.
Okay, so for the uninitiated, including our guest, Josh, the review section of our podcast is where I go on to Letterboxd, and in this case, I went to IMDb as well. Well, actually, no, I went to Rotten Tomatoes for this one. Or reviews from you, the listener and or viewer, and we run through kind of 4 different reviews that I've pulled, and our guests have not at all seen these, right? Like, John, you haven't seen them?
Not at all.
Okay. So if you want to get in on the review action here and you want to submit your own reviews, do me a favor and subscribe to our newsletter. The link for it is in the description of the episode. But I want to get to our first review. So these I found, I kind of try to find a mix of bad and good. This, of course, Letterboxd, you're going to get a lot of the cult film lovers there. So that's kind of what ended up showing up there. But let's get to review number 1. Basically like Deadpool before Deadpool. I think Marvel should hire this guy to make their movies.
Well,
I disagree with the first part, but the second part,
it is kind of like Deadpool. It does have a little bit of vibe like Deadpool.
I mean, Deadpool does have powers,
No, it
and
doesn't.
also Deadpool does have powers, and also Deadpool's more of like a Mel Brooks kind of thing. It's like breaking the fourth wall, kind of looking at winking at the audience.
this movie
kind
is
of thing.
nothing like Deadpool.
Yeah.
What?
I
I'm
guess
sorry,
the
this movie doesn't
snarky
even
humor-
vaguely have it. Sure,
Well,
maybe, but only if you find it funny.
I think what they go with is like the ultra violence that Deadpool has. The fact it's
Okay,
a
sure.
superhero
Yeah,
committing ultra violence. I think that's where this person is saying it's like Deadpool. But I think it's also ignoring the fact that like Deadpool already existed in that world in the comics. Like it's nothing new.
Yeah.
It's more like let's take that character that was doing that already in countless issues of its comic book origins and put it into a movie. And put it in, namely the MCU, which, check our back catalog. We did a whole episode on Wolverine and Deadpool, which I thought it was great. But I can see where with the ultra violence it can come in and say compared to Deadpool. But I just found it funny. It's like, oh, Marvel should maybe have this guy like direct movies and such.
Yeah. And Deadpool's also always been like, the sorbet of comics. Like when certain characters got too big for their britches and too serious, he kind of came in and took the piss out of Thor, Spider-Man, whoever. Like that was kind of his whole purpose.
Yeah, that's true.
He's going to show up at some point in either Doomsday or Secret War, and just it's going to be the weirdest.
If he's not in the like end credit scene, I'm gonna crack up. Like I that's where I would see him pop up. Is like after whatever the hell happens in Doomsday, he's gonna show up, be like, "Hey guys, what happened?"
I was gonna say, Universe Gambit is in Doomsday, so why not Deadpool?
Yeah,
I would do it more like how they had George Clooney bark like a dog on South Park. I would have Ryan Reynolds come on set, have him do it for scale for the joke of it, and have him be like with the mask off, slightly out of focus in the background of a large shot of people, and that's it.
Just do Where's Deadpool like the entire movie, just in the background the entire
he just
time
pops in somewhere that's in the background. Yeah. All right, let's get to review number 2. It's hard to believe that the guy behind Superman and Guardians of the Galaxy and Peacemaker actually made this monstrosity first and still found work in the comic book movie community after.
That's mean.
Oh,
two parts there. One being
mean.
Is that donkey ochres are like onions. They have layers. But also
good point.
But I guess I can kind of understand because I brought it up at the beginning of the episode. It's kind of seemed like this guy was like the anti-superhero guy, which is the polar opposite of him. I mean, he's now worked for Marvel and DC. He clearly has a fucking love of superheroes.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Super is not his first superhero movie. He had made a movie previously in a very, very indie. Like, we're talking way less than even this film was made. He made a movie in the, I believe it was in the 2000s called The Specials. that actually featured Nathan Fillion as the lead, and it was also a superhero movie. So I think James Gunn has always had a love for superheroes and comic books. Like, I think that's always been him. So it's no surprise, and I would also argue, like, I mentioned that Super, I think, really led to Peacemaker, but I think you can make the argument that what he did with Super and what he also did with Slither probably helped lead and kind of get people at Marvel thinking, I think this guy can handle these characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy in a very edgy way. So, for all of Super's faults, which it does have a good bit of them, it does demonstrate that he can command a collection of actors and do it in the world of superheroes.
And to be fair, he did.
He did.
Like, he definitely turned out to be the right fit for Guardians. The one place I will agree with that review is that it is wild that the guy who made Super also made Superman, because it turns out James Gunn, I think, is a little more basic than he would want anyone to believe. That's not a hot take, because Superman, again, kindness is punk rock. After making a movie like Super, that's what selling out looks like in real time.
I take it you are a release the Snyder cut guy. Are you Snyder cut man?
Sir. The only good movie in that world was Wonder Woman.
Okay.
Actually, Birds of Prey was also okay. But,
Birds of Prey was okay.
But no, I mean, honestly, I'm just not a big DC guy for the most part.
I have not been a big DC guy, with the exception of, say, like the Batman, like that series of movies. And I just saw the trailer for this is unrelated to anything we're talking about. Just saw the trailer for Clayface, which looks amazing. John, did you see the trailer yet?
Oh yeah.
I figured you did.
Not the guy who, or the person rather, I should say, that's been portraying this character, but I'm a big Flash man myself, and just kind of wish that person wasn't the performer for so long. Woof. Yeah.
I will say, it would have made way more sense to me if you told me the guy who made Super also was the guy making Clayface. That would make way more sense to me than him going from this dark, gritty, this is what would happen in real life movie, than to this god who is bringing kindness back into the world, one super dog at a time.
I actually liked Superman. I thought it was actually a pretty good movie. I'm a weirdo, though.
No, Superman's fine. Like, I don't think it was amazing, but I think it was solid. The tonal shift is what I'm saying. It turns out, that's why I say, I think it turns out that James Gunn isn't, even if he's King Edgelord, I think he does have a basic side that he's willing to. I
think it's also a thing to say, like, people can mature after, like, 16 years. I know I look at myself 10 years ago, and I know I'm different now than I was then. And I think it's worth saying, like, James Gunn probably matured between, Super and Guardians, and even dealing with some of the backlash from his tweets and all of that stuff. I mean, that stuff does mature you and kind of change your perspective on things. So to say
that that's debatable, but that James Gunn matured, but only because my least favorite part of Superman was the Superman gets canceled storyline.
Yeah.
I feel like James Gunn had some things to get off his chest on
a little bit.
On that part.
A little bit. All right, let's go to review number 3. Bittersweet yet beautiful ending. He didn't get the ending he wants for himself, but he was able to save his wife. She had a happy ending. Yeah. I agree with that.
I think it's kind of what you said, Brian. Yeah.
I have no real notes on that. Sure.
She needed to meet a guy in the program, who's like, he's like a lifer in the program. Like, he's, a counselor there. Like, he's
Yeah.
Like, he hasn't had a drink in like 24 years, but he's still there to sponsor people because that's like his mission in life now. Yeah, that's who she found, in my opinion.
Well, it's just to think that Frank is a fundamentally broken person who needs some serious help. And even though, yes, he saved Sarah, he did all the things that he said he was going to do, he did it in the most psychotic, violent way possible.
Yeah.
The fact he's not in prison is a miracle, let alone the fact
he's not dead is a miracle.
Well, that the death part, but like the fact that like, and this is the whole point. We never really talked about the fact that the detective was murdered in his house, and no one ever really addressed it after the fact.
Oh yeah, that whole scene.
Scene.
I forgot about that too.
Yeah, movie forgot about it as well.
He was hiding out at a child's house, and then that child did things to him.
Sure, I guess so. But the whole point is that
the movie you're defending, Brian.
Yeah, I know. I said listen.
Oh, come on!
Listen, man. Listen, man. I said that it is not awful, but it's problematic. Okay,
you absolutely
did say that. No, I find it funny that like his ending, Frank's ending, is he finally has good moments. He's a good person, but we never ever address the fact that like he should be either dead or in jail, and that never comes up.
Yeah, but murdering sex traffickers is still murder, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll cheer him on though, but it's still murder.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's why we got a goddamn justice system in this country, people.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our final review of the episode. This one came from Rotten Tomatoes, and it's from Sean Burns at the time from the Philadelphia Weekly. He said, if I hadn't foolishly gone and saw Sucker Punch a couple weeks ago, this would be the worst film of the year. Ouch.
Preach.
Oh.
Yeah. Sucker Punch is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Sucker Punch is terrible.
Life.
Absolutely.
Even as like, when did that come out? Like 2008, 2010? I guess it would have come out in 2010.
Yeah, it would have come out around 2010, yeah.
Even as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Even as an 18-year-old back then, I was like, nah, this ain't it.
Nope. I'm like, Zack Snyder, what are you doing? Like I feel like, what are you doing? That
movie was designed for 18-year-old boys to enjoy on the basest possible levels, and even I couldn't get there with it.
I would argue it's designed for 15 and 14-year-old boys to enjoy, because
I would disagree with both of you.
Okay, what would you say, John?
I would say it was designed for 40 and 50-year-old pedophiles. Look at that schoolgirl.
I'd say that's a win there. I think that's
words that
right
came out of your mouth.
I'm going to go to the matinee in the balcony where I can clean one out.
Yeah, exactly. Another compliment to Super is that it is much better than Sucker Punch.
Yes, it is much better.
Low bar, but
it's much better than Sucker Punch. Oh, good reviews. So obviously, Josh, I want to just give you a little bit of time. Tell me about what is going on at the Lindsay. First of all, how long have you been at the Lindsay? Because I know it was under a previous name, and then it changed to the Lindsay, and then they hired you, right?
Correct. And also, thank you for still allowing me to do this after shitting all over your takes.
No.
All in
it's
good fun.
Friendly. It's all in good fun. It's friendly, okay? We're allowed to have differences of opinion. That's what makes this show great, is that you can have conversations like this. And, sometimes you agree with movies, sometimes you don't, and that's fine.
And we should also, I don't think we've mentioned yet that Brian and I are both members of the Pittsburgh Film Critics Association.
We are.
And you know what? This is what makes our little association great. We all have different thoughts and opinions. We all come together at the end of the year and tell everyone what the best movies were.
That's right.
But yeah, no, I started at the Lindsay. I just had my 2-year anniversary in June. So yeah,
congratulations.
It's been 2 years now. Yeah, for people that don't know, I was at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette for 5 years. I was mostly covering film, TV, media. And then I helped start the Film Critics Association, and I was grandfathered in when I left. But yeah, I've been at the Lindsay now for about 2 years. For those that don't know, we are a 2-screen nonprofit movie theater and event space in Sewickley, which is a suburb about 20 minutes north of Pittsburgh. I always like to describe Sewickley as if you took Shadyside and just plopped it like onto the border of Allegheny and Beaver counties.
It's
You basically get
pretty
Sewickley.
accurate.
Yeah, and it's a really cool little movie theater. We're a first run movie theater. Like, because right now we're showing The Odyssey, and by the time this episode airs, we might be showing Young Washington as well, and we got Spider-Man: Brand New Day coming. You know, normal movie theater stuff. But also, as I was alluding to when I was being rude to Super's outdoor scenes, we have something called the Emerging Filmmaker Showcase, where local filmmakers who have made something, they can come to us with their finished work, and we'll put it on our big screen for them. They get to use our screen for free. The events are free. They're open to the public. People can just watch them for free. We literally have a red carpet that we roll out to give them the full
That's
Hollywood
awesome.
on the Mon experience, as I like to say. And we also again, just for the diversity of things we do, the West Point Ballet is having a showcase in our community room on August 7th. We've had concerts and comedy shows and galas in that place. We also do sensory-friendly screenings regularly, generally for people on the autism spectrum, but also just for anyone who likes movies in a little more chill environment, a little bit lower volume, keeping the house lights up, whatever. A judgment-free screening. And in fact, we're having a Spider-Man sensory-friendly screening on August 8th. So yeah, the Lindsays, your friendly neighborhood nonprofit theater. And in fact, I'm pretty sure we are the only nonprofit movie theater in Western PA. I feel fairly safe saying that because I can't think of another one.
I was gonna say I don't think the Manor is a nonprofit theater. I don't.
No.
They're for profit.
Yeah.
I love the Manor, and we're trying to kind of be to the suburbs what the Manor is to the city.
Right.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, the Manor is the only first run movie theater in the city limits.
With the
which is a
Row House is to some degree.
Well, I was going to say Row House Hollywood.
Yeah, Row House Hollywood is. But yeah, I think you might be right. Yeah, it's technically dormant. I think you might be right on that.
Which is wild, right? Like all of our movie theaters are kind of around the city. The waterfront might as well be Pittsburgh, but technically it's Homestead. So
Yeah.
So the point of what I was trying to say is that we're trying to be to the suburbs, but the Manor is to the city.
Right.
And yeah, I love the Manor. Again, I grew up in Squirrel Hill. I had nothing bad to say about them. And I also love Row House. And I saw Battle Royale at the Japanese Film Festival earlier this year.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
Yeah, that was my first time seeing it. It was incredible.
I know.
You were having a good time. Nobody on the back end was having a good time. The Japanese Film Festival is the most stressful thing that we do.
I can imagine.
And I've seen some people that are unflappable there. Never see them sweat. Like I come in, I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he's like, "Fucking don't talk to me." I'm like, "Ah."
Hey man, hey, the Lindsay also, we work with Film Pittsburgh a lot. We just hosted a bunch of J Film screenings. We've been hosting the Three Rivers Film Festival screenings for the last few years. We know the joys, the agony, and the ecstasy of helping to host film festivals.
Yeah, I know. I went to a number of screenings a couple years ago at the Lindsay that were for the 40-hour film project.
Right.
Because they've done some screenings there, and I think did the awards. I think they did one of the awards there. And yeah,
I think 2 years ago we did that, if I remember correctly.
Yep, and it was beautiful theater and really good parking. That's the really best part is parking. That is such an important thing with an indie theater is that you can have access to parking. So I'd say, yeah, if you go to a normal theater like the Manor and you're like, I can't find parking anywhere because it's in the middle of Squirrel Hill, and Lindsay's great for that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you my pro tip for everyone is it's just always that there's free street parking 2 blocks away.
Yeah. And if you go to the CVS down the street right afterwards, you might run into Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, you might run into. Honestly, a lot of the athletes live out there. You could run into anyone. I was just thinking that last summer, and these were for more specific events, but Neil Walker was there, and Ryan Shazier was there for an event late last year. Yeah, no, we partner with the best.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, it's been awesome having you on, Josh, and I'm glad we got to have you on for Super. And I'm glad, honestly, that we got to have a little bit of a cinema fight over this movie. I actually enjoy. I really enjoy.
Actually.
I enjoy having discussions like this.
This was just a spirited discussion.
No, but that's the thing that honestly this podcast does really well when it actually happens is, having these spirited discussions on movies that maybe we don't all agree on. And like the best compliment I've ever gotten from people who've listened or watched the show is that they feel like they're listening to their friends talk about movies. And sometimes when your friends talk about movies, you get opinions that are vastly different. And, I think this is great. So I'm really happy you got to hang out with us for a little over an hour. Do me a favor and please tell our audience, where can they find more information about you, your work, and the Lindsay, and where to follow you and go find more info.
Sure, yeah. Anybody can follow me on Instagram at Jaxelberg with an H. You can follow the Lindsay on Instagram at the Lindsay Theater. We're on Facebook. Also on LinkedIn, which is an oddly poppin' platform these days. And if you really want to know what's going on at the Lindsay, I highly recommend going onto our website, thelindsaytheater.org, and subscribing to our newsletter. We have a weekly update, a big update that we put out every Tuesday, and a weekend short list that we put out every Friday. And I do all of those, so that's the place. If you ever enjoyed my writing at the Post Gazette or anywhere else, that's where you can still kind of find my written voice. So That's the best place to find me.
Awesome. John, where can they find you at on the internets?
Well, before I plug myself, I just want to say, don't sleep on newsletters, because we have one too. And yes, they are a great communication device. So subscribe to our newsletter, become a part of our family, talk to us.
Please do. Please subscribe to the newsletter.
But
that's not too desperate, but
yeah. I'm kind of an old timer, so you can just find me on Facebook and Instagram. But more importantly, check out my YouTube channel, JDubs, the letter J space DUB' Video Nasties over on YouTube, where I go into unnecessarily picky detail on certain movies, on where they hold up, or if they give me so many questions. And there's a lot of interviews over there, so please check out my YouTube channel. And if you like what I do all the YouTube stuff. You don't need me to tell you what they are. You do them.
Do them. Just do them.
Hit the bell. Hit the thumbs up. All the things.
All the things.
You know the things.
You know the things. You've heard them. You're going to hear them again in about 5 seconds. So if you have loved this podcast, please do me a favor and share it. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. Share it with your favorite Troma fan, because your favorite Troma fan is going to appreciate this episode. Or your favorite James Gunn fan. They're out there. And of course, if you really want to help us out, do me a favor and follow us on your favorite podcast app of choice by going to cinemapsychoshow.com/follow. You can follow us on your favorite podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. And of course, if you're watching us here on YouTube, hey, thank you so much for doing that. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the little bell, hit the subscribe button, and let me know down in the comments, what did you think of James Gunn's Super? And with that, we will see you next time.
Oh, shit. I don't have anything. Good night.